This is the Art of Darkness podcast with Kevin Kautzman.
And Abby Lucas.
We're a couple of very online writers interested in the dark side of creativity.
This show is about art and the people who make it, what it costs them, and what it takes to bring something unique and impactful into the world.
On each episode, we examine the life and work of an artist you might think you know.
Don't worry, they're all safely dead.
We aren't. Find us online at artofdarkpod.com, and please support the show through Patreon or Substack. You get extra stuff. Thank you. We're back with another episode of Art of Darkness, a core episode. When the going gets weird, the weird turn pro. I'm Kevin Kautzman with Abby Lucas, my newish co-host for season 5. Abby is back in London. How are you?
I am
Abby?
indeed. I'm doing very well, thank you.
Good. I'm glad you're
Pleased
doing
to be here.
well. Yeah, exciting times. Let's get the housekeeping out of the way. Everybody, speaking of London, I'm going to be there in 2 weeks. Go and see my play, Moderation, moderationplay.com. Tickets are on sale now. It's going to be a hoot. Lydia Parker is directing. Abby has done some work on this as a video artist, like Knox Harrington.
I'm the video guy.
Yeah. like Knox Harrington in The Big Lebowski. Abby did some video art for Moderation. So please go get tickets at moderationplay.com. And then if you want to hang out with us at Verderin, which is near the theater where Moderation is happening, Abby and I will be there doing a short core episode, Art of Darkness Live, Goya's Demons. We will be doing this on March 24th at 7 p.m. Greenwich Mean Time. The timiest, the origin of time, where time began.
The home of time.
The home of time itself. And of course, we know that's also where Heart of Darkness is set. Because of course, Heart of Darkness is set on the Thames. It is not actually set in the Congo. It is a story told on the Thames. We love
we learned
these
that just last week.
Yes, we did on Art of Darkness. Yeah, so please join us. The tickets for that are only £8, so you can't go wrong. And that is on the 24th of March. It's all at artofdarkpod.com. Okay, you may have guessed it from the quote. This is a core episode on the great Hunter S. Thompson, a true American, a real character. Let's start. Abby, what do you know about Dr. Gonzo, about Raoul Hunter?
I don't know a lot about his life. I know that he was a journalist. I know that he had some problems with the substances. I know that he was partially responsible for new journalism, so maybe he's in part to blame for all of those recipe blogs that we now have to deal with. You
take that back. You take that back. Can't say that about Hunter.
Everything has its cause and effect. I have definitely seen Fear and Loathing in Las Vegas a few times. I'm pretty sure I've read it as well, but it would have been a long time ago.
Yes, the most famous work, of course, Fear and Loathing in Las Vegas, and the most famous adaptation of his material by the great Terry Gilliam, a fellow Minnesotan,
Yep.
the one American Python, directed it, starring Johnny Depp. And we're going to talk a lot about Johnny Depp on this episode, but mostly we're going to talk about Hunter S. Thompson, who I'll confess is one of my artistic heroes. I think a lot of young writers, maybe particularly even middle American writers, but I think just American writers go through a Hunter phase, the same way that Hunter went through a Fitzgerald phase and a Hemingway phase. He consciously tried to put himself among the greats. And the question we're going to ask on this episode is, did he achieve this? And I'm heavily biased, but I want to put that in the air. Before we dig into it, let me tease what we're going to do for the After Dark. And of course, the After Dark is what we do for patrons. This is going to be a long one. I'm going to try to keep the core episode to a nice, tight 3 hours ish, 3.5 hours. I'll do my best. This is one of my heroes. I love reading about Hunter and his life. It's endlessly fascinating. Um, but I've got some really, really good stuff for the patrons on the After Dark. And we're going to start with, of course, because this is the year of Lynch, we're going to read something randomly from Lynch's great book on creativity, Catching the Big Fish. Then I'm going to read all or some of Johnny Depp's fine introduction to the outstanding oral
Oh,
biography,
wow.
Gonzo, that Jan Wenner put together. And of course, he's the creator of Rolling Stone, little magazine called Rolling Stone, back when Rolling Stone mattered. I think it's Jan Wenner is how you say his name. And of course, he was one of Hunter's intimates, and their careers were interwoven. Hunter was the rock
Hmm.
star at Rolling Stone right at the beginning. We're also going to talk about the origin of the word gonzo. Where did that come from? Because of course that was his big word, gonzo journalism. What does that mean? We're also going to talk about the origin of the phrase fear and loathing in his work, and I learned some interesting stuff from this. This is my probably my favorite book about Hunter is this oral biography. It's one of these. There's one like this for Bowie as well, where it's just figure after figure, and you open it up to a random page, and it's like, oh, here's a Kennedy, and oh, here's Marilyn Manson, and oh, here's Johnny Depp, and here's his son, and here's his first wife, and it paints this really. It reads like a novel, the way they've
Oh, it's kind of
curated
like
it.
a real life Savage Detectives.
Yeah. Yes. Correct. Savage Detectives was real life too, Abby. I mean,
Oh, yeah.
I'm
I mean,
yeah. I mean, yeah, one of my saws on this show that I keep coming back to is that nonfiction is fiction. Right? It's all fiction. Yeah. So we're gonna have a lot of fun here. We're gonna talk a lot about his first wife, his long suffering first wife, Sandy. Then we're also going to well, are you aware that he was a suicide?
yes, I am. Yeah.
Okay, all right. Uh, we're going to read his son's recollection of his suicide. So
Oh,
Juan Fitzgerald Thompson, his son, wrote a memoir called "Stories I Tell Myself," and one of our listeners sent me this book
oh,
as a
wow.
gesture. Yeah, and so I just want to. I don't want to name names, but they know who they are. So thank you. And hey, listen, we love getting gifts. I love hearing from almost all of our listeners. You can find us at artofdarkpod@gmail.com. You can find me on Twitter, where I'm renowned for my posting. You know where to find me. Just go to Art of Dark Pod on Twitter, and then I pop up there periodically. Couts Mania, Abby's on there too. But genuinely, we love hearing from listeners, especially if you know that we have an episode coming up and you want to share an insight you have. I don't expect you to ship us a book or every time, but if there's some particular factoid, love hearing
Hmm.
about that. We have a Discord too, artofdarkpod.com/Discord. There's a channel in there called Show Prep. Like Abby, you're preparing Spike Milligan. I've got a Picasso
Yes.
episode coming up. You're going to be doing Audrey Hepburn at the end of the year.
Yeah, that's later
Uh,
on in the year.
yeah, later on in the year. So just a lot of fun stuff coming up. And again, if you have special insights or if you go, you have to read this. Similar thing happened too with Wagner. I'm getting ready to do
Yes,
Wagner.
somebody on Instagram had recommended the Wagner book.
Yeah, there's a very particular Wagner book. I'm not going to go and find it right now, but he says this is the one. Okay, guess
Hmm.
what? We have a little bit of Patreon money. We could afford a $20 book. Okay, and so thank you to the patrons. Patreon.com/Art of Dark Pod. That's how you get the After Dark. That's how you get the bonus material. That's how you get access to the book club. That's how you say, hey, I like what you two are doing. I appreciate you. I've listened to 10 core episodes. Listen, I've got $5 a month. You can have the five. It's not even a coffee. My Americanos that keep me as jacked up as I am right now cost with a tip now $6.
Hey,
Okay.
as I was saying to Kevin the other week, I went through LAX. I spent $18 on a coffee and a croissant. So,
Right. So we are asking you for about a
The
fourth of a coffee and a croissant. Go on, Abby.
yeah, I mean, the books might actually be cheaper than that.
It's crazy. Books have actually not, books aren't suffering from inflation. I just realized that.
Huh.
Oh, no, books aren't suffering from inflation. We need to
What does it
podcast.
mean?
Yeah. Well, I think we need to podcast harder. The next book that we have in in book club, which is a lot of fun, which is behind the paywall, and it's a way to hang out with us if you want. Those are recorded. We go for about 90 minutes. The next book we're doing is Aaron Gwynn's novella, The Cannibal Owl, on March 29th. That is going to be a lot of fun. Aaron is going to join us there behind the paywall to talk about his new novella, which is getting very solid reviews, and I cannot wait to read it. I will be reading it this week after after I finish my Hunter episode that I'm in the middle of. These episodes take up a lot of mind share. Okay, two other things for the After Dark that we're going to talk about. I want to do a mini biography of the great Ralph Steadman,
Hmm.
who was Hunter's visual collaborator. Their careers are intertwined. I've got a poster here. You can't see it, but I've got a poster of Ralph Steadman's work. I think he did the cover. He did some work for the great cult British film Withnell and I.
Oh, okay.
You would know Ralph Steadman's work, and he's British. He's English, and the story of how they met and their collaboration is one of my absolute favorite stories. I'm not including the biography of Ralph as a footnote. It's more of a nice dessert, right? He
Hmm.
deserves his own episode, but it does seem fitting because their work is so commonly associated. You see a lot of Ralph Steadman's work too, like on there was that period where beer got very very popular, very niche beers, right? Suddenly everybody was drinking
Hmm.
IPAs and stuff. He clearly like did original art for different beer companies. So
Oh,
he's
okay.
an artist whose work you would know if you saw it. He has a truly
Right.
unique style, just like Hunter. And I believe Hunter dosed him with Ella with acid the very
And the
first
drop
time that
just got better.
well I'm going to tell this story in the main episode. It's one of my favorite Hunter stories. His first truly Gonzo piece, one of my favorites, is called "The Kentucky Derby is Decadent and Depraved," because of course
Hmm.
Hunter was from Louisville. He was from Kentucky, and he always had a grudge against uh, the swells, shall we say, in his town. He always harbored some resentment, and we're going to explain why. He didn't just come out of nowhere, and so Stedman was assigned to do some illustrations for this. And I believe he landed in Louisville his first time in America, and Hunter dosed him with LSD and took him to the Kentucky Derby. Just wait, because Abby's coming to
Uh,
Minnesota for the first time in April. So just wait. We're gonna
yeah, that
dose
ain't
you
happening.
with you're gonna land. We're gonna dose you with lutefisk and hot dishes, and it's gonna be Prince 24/7. Prince and the Replacements.
I can hang with that.
We're gonna have a good time. Abby's gonna be in town in April. Um, we're gonna have to we'll have to record something for just like a behind the scenes thing, Abby, for the pod.
Yeah.
Okay, and then I got one more final thing for the After Dark. We're going to talk about the story behind his book dedications. He dedicated one of his books to Richard Nixon,
Oh,
which is very funny.
he wasn't a big fan of Nixon, was he?
No, but I would say he was like an admirer, almost like a
Okay.
frenemy in his own mind, like a worthy foe,
A
right?
worthy foe.
I think the
Nice.
dedication is something like to Richard Nixon, who never let me down. Something to that effect. And listen, if you're alive and making art and being a public figure and you don't have enemies, you
You're
probably
doing it
are
wrong.
you're doing it wrong. Okay? Okay. We're gonna have a lot of fun here today. So please support the pod, patreon.com/art of dark pod. Source material, I just got scads of books. I've got stories I tell myself that our friend sent in. I've got Gonzo. I've got a bunch of his letters, which is fascinating. I've got Hunter S. Thompson, the last interview. I've got the Rum Diary, which of course was
Mm.
adapted into a film, not a great film.
Yeah, I didn't
Uh,
see that film.
Yeah, it. I have a funny story about that. Let me save that for when that comes up because I want to get into the episode. I've heard from more than one person in comments like, "Get on with it" at the beginning of it. So I'm
That
gonna
is hitting
get.
the
Yeah,
30-second forward
yeah.
button
Oh God,
over and
counselor,
over.
just stop. Just get into it. All right, so I'm gonna get into it. Okay, I hear you. I hear you loud and clear. Um, Seriously, come hang out with us in London. It's going to be fun. Go to artofdarkpod.com. We keep everything updated. All right. Hunter S. Thompson was born into a middle class family in Louisville, Kentucky. I need to look up what that middle name is because it's a funny one.
Oh,
Stockton.
I Stockton, yeah. I did see that
Hunter
earlier.
Stockton Thompson. I'll tell you something. There's never been a Hunter in my family. That's a very particular type of American name. I think it's a great name. I mean, just much like Hunter Biden. I wonder if Hunter Biden was named after Hunter Thompson. It's entirely possible.
Oh, interesting.
And if so, that's another case of nominative determinism. Because we know that both Hunter Thompson and Hunter Biden are fond of substances. Let's see. Yeah, it doesn't say. Well, in
Yeah,
any
that's
event,
that's probably not something you publish
yeah, yeah.
freely.
Well, in any event, he was born in Louisville, Kentucky, and he was born in 1937. So let's put him there, right before the Second War, big war.
Hmm.
Uh, his mother, Virginia Ray, was a head librarian. Okay. His father, Jack Thompson, was a World War I veteran and public insurance adjuster. They married in 1935, and Hunter arrived in 1937 as the first of three sons, the eldest son. The name Hunter reportedly came from his mother's side, while Stockton was drawn from his maternal grandparents. So we're naming the oldest son after mom's side. When Hunter was 6, the family moved to the well-to-do Cherokee Triangle neighborhood. However, life turned difficult in 1952 when his father died of myasthenia gravis, which
What is that?
I have no idea what that is. We're going to look it up on the show. This is funny. Brad and I used to joke about this. About I think it's on our big one of our bingo cards from years ago, where it's like
We'll look
medical
it up on.
condition. Yeah, there are. Listen, if there's anything I learned from Art of Darkness, Abby, there are so many ways to die. It's a chronic autoimmune disorder that impairs communication between nerves and muscle. So
Oh, that
does
does not
not
look fun.
does not sound pleasant. And I'm going to read now a little bit from the Gonzo book. I maybe jumped ahead a little bit with the father's death, but on Art of Darkness, we always do like to flag the death of a parent early because
Hmm.
it happens a suspiciously large number of times with these artists who it's like they're making up for something. It's a it's a heavy thing for a young
Yeah.
person to go through. Yeah. All right. So I'm going to read from chapter one, coming of age in Louisville. We had guns in our cars. We shot houses, mailboxes, garbage cans. We shoplifted. We broke into liquor stores. We jimmy a lock or break a window. I never paid a hotel bill when I was with Hunter. We just go out the window or the fire escape. He was drinking like heavily by the time he was 15. Okay. This
Right.
is There's no bigger alcoholic on the show, including the hosts, that we've covered. Okay. Okay. Hunter and Jan Venner will say this later too, is that we'll say his problem was alcoholism for sure. All the other drug use, and I'm going to read the famous litany of his daily routine, which is wonderful. It's so
Hmm.
fun. But the problem was the alcohol. It's actually crazy. I've been thinking about it recently because okay, just put politics aside, right? People ask, they look at Trump and they go, "How does he look like that?" Now I know it's lighting and he's got, but the dude is like in his mid 80s
Mm.
and he looks pretty solid. Hunter in his 60s looks worse than okay. And the answer for the president, people say, is like he doesn't drink, he doesn't smoke, etc. And so
Mm.
I'm just going to say it's got my wheels turning a little bit. Like there are consequences to the lifestyle that someone like Hunter would live. Okay.
Oh yeah, for sure.
Yeah, and so the great book here, the oral biography, starts with Sandy Thompson, who is at the time was Sandy Wright because they would finally divorce.
Mm.
She met Hunter in 1958 and was married to him for 17 years. And being married to Hunter each year counts for 3 years. Being married to an alcoholic of that
Right.
stature, it's like she was married to him for 50 years. That's what I just
Yeah,
made
that's
that
got to be
up.
tough.
Oh yeah. Here's what she had to say. Hunter was born different, very different. His mother, Virginia, and I talked a lot many, many years ago about Hunter as a little boy. He was angry. He was charming. He was a lot of trouble. And what I always used to say, which is interesting in light of the end of his life, was that he shot out of the womb angry. And then he left that same way. This is someone who grew up with Hunter in the neighborhood, Neville Blakemore. My grandmother owned a house a block away from Hunter's. I couldn't tell you the first time I met him. I just knew about him. It was a neighborhood in which people would sit on the porch and talk to the people walking by. Washing was hung in the backyard to dry, and ironing was done with flat irons heated on stoves. Everybody knew everybody. The generations knew everybody. Everybody knew the help and so on. In the afternoon, we'd listen to radio programs like Superman and Sky King. Television did not exist. Hunter's dad, Jack, was born in Horse Cave, Kentucky in 1893 and came to Louisville with his three brothers when his widowed mother moved here. His first wife, who was from eastern Kentucky, died in 1923. 2 years after their first and only child, Jack Jr., was born, Jack Jr. was raised by his maternal grandmother in Greenup, Kentucky, and he wasn't moved around much. And he was a lot older. He served in World War II and Korea. So Hunter had an older half brother.
Mm.
Mr. Thompson was a tallish man with glasses and gray hair combed straight back. He had served in World War I and he was stern. Hunter's mother was Virginia Ray, who Jack married in 1935, and her mother was named, well, we called her Mimo. Hunter and Mimo, you don't hear that much anymore. Hunter was Jack and Virginia's first child, born on July 18th, 1937. Mr. Thompson was an insurance agent, and Mimo helped with raising the children and was always around the house. She'd read to us. This is Deborah Fuller, Hunter's personal assistant from 1982 to 2003. Hunter's mother told me that he was born a night owl. She cursed him for that. Oh God, he never slept at the same time as his brothers. But and this would remain his entire life. Juan would tell stories. I think he would get up at 3 or 4 in the
Right.
afternoon. That was how he operated. Yeah, and his morning would start with Chivas and cocaine. That's how he would start his morning. Yeah, we'll get into the whole list. It's fun. But Virginia loved him and was very proud of him. She told me he was a very charismatic young man, even as a boy. Kids, boys, and girls would come around to the house and sit on the front steps to wait and walk to school with Hunter. But she also said that he was a feisty one, that he got in trouble quite a bit. Neville again. Just painting a picture here. My parents
Hmm.
didn't like my hanging around with him, even when we were pretty young. They thought he was a bully. I think they may have been right. He was a bully. But we always wanted to go over to his house. Hunter was a magnet. There was always something going on. We had toy soldiers and we'd play these huge war games. World War II was a big influence. We'd play Germans and Japanese and have battles all over the neighborhood. People would have cardboard guns and cap pistols and backpacks and helmet liners. Some guys had BB guns. Hunter got his interest in guns from another neighbor, Joe Bell. Hunter loved guns, loved them. Joe understood firearms when he came out of the womb. He loved them, and he always had the latest thing. Uh, yeah, let's start here. Hunter would go over to another friend's house, and behind the street where this friend lived was Bear Grass Creek and a culvert. This is Art of Darkness, so buckle up. A lot of
Hmm.
African Americans lived on the other side of the creek. Hunter and his group would shoot these guys with BB guns and hurl racial insults. And the black guys, here's Louisville in the 50s, right? Um, and the black guys would finally have enough and swarm down into the culvert and up the wall. And Hunter and the others would retreat into their friend's house and hide. They'd start these little mini race wars.
Oh no.
Terrible. You've got to know too, like Hunter, this is something they would say about him is that he was a Southern gentleman. That's what he thought about himself. He
Right.
thought of himself as a Southern, Kentucky's the South. And, but
Hmm.
he was also he was also very right on and very righteous, and he would come around in the 60s to be uh he was very progressive thinking.
Right.
He's the sort of Democrat we wouldn't recognize today.
Mm.
But he was also like a breed of his own in that period. Um, let's see here. Uh, Another time when I was 12 or 13, I had the neighbor kids over for lunch and we played soldiers in the backyard. Hunter stole a bunch of my soldiers. I figured it out that night and it really hurt me. My father said, "Well, I'm very sorry, but it shouldn't be that much of a surprise because that's the kind of guy he is." That for me meant, okay, he's fun to be around, but be careful. All right. So, and there's more like this. There's Sandy's describing him, as very good looking, tall, slender. He had this wonderful gait and just a tremendous power of seduction. And he knew this very early on, how he could seduce not just women, but men, children, anybody he really wanted to. All right. Let me see if I can. This is one of his high school sweethearts. I was a new student at, this is Luann Eiler, a new student at Highland Junior High when I met Hunter in ninth grade in 1951. Ninth grade. He was
Mhm.
at my, I'm watching my oldest daughter go through this stuff right now. Everything changes and nothing changes. He was at my log at Twin Peaks, right? What year is this? He
Yeah.
was at my locker between classes, and before I knew it, he rode home on the bus with me, and then he carried my books. He put his arm around me. It was a very innocent time. We'd go to the movies, which you was only 25 cents a person. Even with popcorn and a Coke, you could have a very nice date for $1. And we would go to high school football games or walk from my house to the ice cream shops. Sometimes we got around on the bus, or he had older friends who drove, and we double dated with them. Afterward, he would drop me off at my house and say goodnight. But once I arrived at my door, my mother knew I was home and she set a time limit, 5 minutes, and that was it. So after we said goodbye, Hunter would throw pebbles at my bedroom window and he would stand outside my window and we would talk for another 45 minutes or an hour. Puppy love. He was very charming and handsome and had wonderful manners and treated me very well. I wouldn't take any guff from him, and I think he liked that. And I could outstare him, which used to annoy him greatly. He had a lot of energy. I wouldn't call it sexual energy at that point because it was ninth grade in the 50s, but he was different from the other young men I dated. There was a presence about him. And yes, he would draw attention to himself. In our sophomore year, we were double dating at a neighborhood theater called The Bard. Afterward, he told me that he was going to go with the other couple and he'd be back. In a few minutes, he up drove a car with this little old lady in the back, all dressed up, screaming, help me, I'm being kidnapped." Well, it was Hunter. He had dressed in his mother's clothes. He had a hat and a veil, and he had on her stockings rolled down to his knee, and he was screeching in this high voice. Well, I got so mad because it called so much attention to himself. I started walking home, and Hunter followed me in the car, hanging out the back window, shouting, "Please get in the car. I promise I'll never do this to you again." I walked all the way home. Uh, and so they would date for a while. Hunter loved pranks. There's great
Okay.
stories of him showing up at, like, I don't know if I'm going to cover it, so I'm just going to say it. But later, when he was writing for Rolling Stone and he was the special boy, he was the rock star. They had some big conference somewhere, I think maybe in Colorado. Uh, and Hunter would just show up in the meetings whenever he wanted to, and he would bring like whoopee cushions and air horns, and he was that guy. He liked to prank. Um, let's see here. This is Porter Bibb, one of his classmates, describing the scene in town here and how Hunter would end up in the Air Force.
Mm.
There were basically four schools. There was male or Malay, I don't know how they say it, for the white males who were going to college. That's funny, male for the white males who were going to college. There was manual for the guys who were not going to college and were going to be manual laborers or blue collar workers, the American caste system in action.
Mm.
There was St. Xavier for the Catholics, the one true faith, and Central High for the blacks. Male, though, was really an extraordinary place, even though it was a public high school. We had people teaching there who would turn down tenure at Yale and Princeton. Louisville's this like old
Wow.
money. Yeah, it's this old money kind of town. I've actually never been there. I'd love to go. It's actually not that far from here. I think I could drive in like 10 or 12 hours,
Not that
which
far.
not that far. Um, Louisville is one of those towns where I sometimes will like look at their climate and look at their real estate and go, in another life, I could make myself obnoxious in this town.
Right.
Mhm. This is another one of his classmates. Hunter went to Highland Junior High School and then Atherton High School for a semester and then down to Male. It wasn't long before he joined the Castlewood Athletic Club and later the Athenaeum Literary Association. Those were the two organizations that shaped all our young lives, especially Hunter's. To get into both Castlewood and later the Athenaeum, you had to rush. So these are like high school pledging. So
Mm.
it's helpful in this period to ratchet everything we do in our lives a few years forward, except
Okay.
but really they came of age faster, I think. Maybe sex was still kind of maybe delayed a little bit because of the sort of but they would things would really like it was really, really serious early. Um, Hunter loved to pledge people. One of the things he liked best was to have pledges throw fits. We'd go into a restaurant, and all of a sudden, on his command, you'd throw an epileptic fit and scream and roll on the floor and carry on. Sooner or later, they'd have to call either the police or the ambulance, and you'd have to run off. Hunter would be outside just doubled over laughing. We were all very keen on athletics. We hired coaches and we played football against another team in other parts of the city, and we generally won. Hunter played end, and I played tackle. Um, he played an outside position
Hmm.
on offense. It sounds
Okay.
like he might have played both sides of the ball. Um, in basketball, we played in the City 15 and under league. 3 out of 4 years, we won the league championship. One of Hunter's big disappointments was that he didn't grow in the ninth and 10th grades when he was 15 and 16. He was short. It wasn't until his
Oh,
junior year that he grew, maybe 3 or 4 inches, but by that time it was all over. He was a smoker and a drinker, and he wasn't the athlete that he really wanted to be. And that's what I'm saying. He's like 16 years old, and people are already describing him as a smoker and a drinker. All right. Dad is dead.
wow. Because
Yeah.
dad's dead. He's short.
Right. And
What else
his
is left in life?
the written word, podcasting or writing. Um, But his mother, I believe, descended into alcoholism with the death
Right.
of the poor woman. Terrible. I mean, you're dealing with three sons, and the father dies.
Yeah, and he would
Terrible.
have had a lot of responsibility as the eldest son for
And a
his
lot of pressure.
brothers.
Hmm.
Mm.
Let's see. His best friend from his early days was probably Duke Rice. He was a skinny kid and not all that tall, and suddenly he shot up to be 6'6" or 6'7" and got a basketball scholarship to the Citadel, where he was the only player of the time who was able to shut down Jerry West. This is bringing back all sorts of memories for me because I distinctly remember this, how like just purely based on physiognomy or like where you were at the time, you go out for sports, you're tall, you would play basketball. You know what I mean? Like, you can't control it, and it's not
Right.
fair, and it's just how it is. Um, but Hunter loved sports. He was a freak for sports, and it's in all of his writing, and it's in all of his. He started in the Air Force as I think, writing as like the sports editor or the sports person for the base's paper, which apparently you can in the '60s or whatever it is, you could just coast in the Air Force writing about sports for the paper. Um, so let's see here. Uh, Duke was the athlete that Hunter always wanted to be, and Hunter's little brother Davison was an All-American high school football player and went to Vanderbilt on a football scholarship. That's a big deal. Vandy beat Bama this year, and that's a shout out to my friend Matt Sachs. Roll Tide. I have a cousin on the Alabama basketball team who went to the
Oh,
Final
no
Four. They
way.
went to the final. I do. Yeah, he's from North Dakota. We were on Facebook. I went on Facebook, and everybody in North Dakota was like, "Wait, isn't this guy? We're related to this guy. He's on TV." So anyway, it's on my mom's side. So I say roll tide and shout out to Matt Sachs. Matt Sachs was one half of the cast of Moderation here in St. Paul. Anyway.
And I believe he is coming on the pod next week.
Oh, well, there you go. Yeah. So you'll meet Matt Sachs. Really good guy, just a huge football guy. We watch football together. Really cool guy. And an artist and an actor. You could be an artist and into sports and football. Um, Hunter was surrounded by guys who had the sports dream, and he was really the best of all of us growing up in any of these sports. And then he stayed a little kid at the critical time. And then
Mm.
2 years later, it was too late to catch up. Since Hunter couldn't be an athlete, he had to turn his energies to something else, and he turned it to social activities based around various shapes of bottles. Now, when we took the bus downtown to the orange bars for hot dogs and orange drinks, we'd put gin in our drinks and go to the movies. This is Doug Brinkley, the literary executor of his estate. He learned that he could essentially become a leader or a bully by verbal extravagance and by doing the most outrageous pranks, that he could become cooler than the football quarterback or the head of some glib Kentucky high school club by being a wild ass maverick, ready to find the weaknesses in somebody and rip them to shreds. It gave him the upper hand.
Mm.
This is Gerald Tyler. Hunter was the most charismatic, natural leader I've ever been subjected to. I could walk into a room with him and everybody would gravitate to Hunter. He just had a way about him. He was very appealing to all the girls, and he was a cutie. Okay, Gerald. It was probably his mother's training. He was very nice to girls, almost chivalrous, really. Doug Brinkley, it's not easy for a working class woman to raise three boys full of testosterone when you don't have a support system for it. So she turned to
Mm.
gin. And to add to that, the fact that Hunter at a young age had a bit of a deformity with his legs, the bow legged walk that people would imitate later was there when he was young. And it kept him from being the sports star he wanted to be. It wasn't just that one leg was longer than the other. He had a bit of a pain problem with his back and spine, a birth defect in a sense. He didn't cultivate that distinctive walk that he had, the walk from Fear and Loathing.
Mm. Yeah.
He couldn't help it. Johnny Depp lived in his basement, right? Studying for that. Oh yeah.
In Hunter's basement?
Yeah. Yeah.
Oh, wow.
Johnny
No, I
Depp.
didn't know
Yeah, no,
that.
Johnny. Yeah. Hunter would always call it Johnny's room. He lived in his basement for like a year. Yeah, and then when Hunter died, Depp had the sculpture rocket made that shot Hunter's ashes into the air. We're going to talk all about it. They were genuine buddies, Like I don't think it was a put on. I mean,
Right. That's
very.
incredible.
Oh yeah, I mean, in a lot of ways, that was the end of an era for sure. That the '60s ended when Hunter was shot into the air over.
Yeah.
That was the end of the '60s. I call it. I call it now. I'm saying it now. The official end of the cool '60s was when Hunter died and Johnny Depp shot his ashes into the air. Um, yeah. So, uh, and Hunter quickly learned that you can be made fun of when you have a deformity. And the
Mm.
way to not be made fun of is to take the Nietzschean offensive and lash out before you can even be hit and get people afraid of you. He was railing after bullies or the people that he thought were screwing the little guy. And that's his thing. He always stood up for the little guy. We're going to see there's an incident that comes up here that would set the trajectory of his life, where some other boys were involved and they got to skate because their dads were part of the good old boy network, but Hunter
Mm.
was left stranded because he did not have a father to back him up.
Right.
And that injustice he took with him all his life. And that partly is what made him like a lifer as a Democrat. And back when
Yeah.
that party stood for something, the parties have flipped and everything's gone crazy. But um you have to know about that to understand his politics. And politics are huge for him. There's an entire period where
Mm.
I've got a whole book here, Fear and Loathing on the Campaign Trail, 1972. We're going to read from some of that. Incredible. Okay, this is Lou Ann Eiler. Hunter's father died in July between our freshman and sophomore years. Can you imagine?
Oh,
You're in
God.
high school and you're just coming of age and like learning how to be a man and how to treat girls, and you got to go to dances and social events, and your dad drops dead.
Yeah.
Ugh, brutal. Um, this is actually pretty heartbreaking. Hunter showed up on my doorstep. I had a large porch and sat for hours, not saying too much. One of the loneliest things I've ever seen was Hunter walking away from my porch to catch the bus on the night his father died. I just had a buddy who lost his dad. He was expecting him for a few more years. So
Yeah.
I'm not going to name names, but they know who they are. So, whenever that happens, you always try to reach out to people, but there's nothing you can say, right?
No.
You just say, I just say it gets easier, but it never gets easy. And
Yeah.
then you say, I'm here if you need anything. That's all you can do. Um,
Uh, Yeah, you just have to be present and listen if you need if they need that.
mhm.
Do some
Yep.
things.
Offer to help, really,
Yeah.
like offer to materially help, you
Mm.
know. Um, in any event, uh, it was dark and the streetlight was on. He wasn't openly emotional, but I held his hand. He had decided that he needed to be here. This is Sandy. Hunter's father had been, from what I heard from Hunter's friends, quite a strict disciplinarian. So I'm guessing that he held Hunter in check and then he was gone. Virginia became an alcoholic. And even
Mm.
though Hunter was drinking then, he hated Virginia's drinking. This is Doug Brinkley. Hunter never really liked Jack Kerouac's On the Road. I agree. He thought
Oh,
the writing was. I'm just not a big fan of On the Road. Never have been. I
I
the
I think I tried to read it when I was maybe 16, which was probably too young, or I don't know.
yeah
But yeah, I couldn't get into it then, and I haven't tried since. So
yeah. I should probably try again, but it never
yeah.
grabbed me. Yeah, he thought the writing was kind of sloppy and romantic and over sentimental. That's where I'm at. Yeah,
Hmm.
Hunter for the win. But he told me he thought Kerouac was a genius for two things: discovering Neil Cassidy, whom Hunter thought was flat out amazing, and using the literary construct of looking for the lost dad I never had.
Right.
His mother stayed on top of Hunter and his brothers the best that she could, and it was her bringing books home from the library like Huck Finn and White Fang and making her boys read that turned Hunter into a writer. Hunter had a criminal cast to his mind, and he would have become a criminal if not for the literature that his mother infused into the household. Porter Bibb. Louisville had what we called literary societies, but they were basically social clubs. The one that Hunter and I were in, the Athenaeum Literary Association, was 125 years old and very prestigious.
Hmm.
I'm going to take action and take steps to ensure that Art of Darkness will be here in 120 years. I get it could be we could just feed the AI
Oh
and
yeah.
have our satanic AI clones do it, or we just pass it
Hmm.
on to posterity. But the Literary Society of Art of Darkness is going to be here into the 22nd century. I believe that. What do you think, Abby? Were you ready to sign away your life rights?
Sure, why not?
What do I have to lose?
Does anyone really want them anyway?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, yeah. Take my wife, please. Take my work wife, please. um, so this is him talking about the club. We would meet every Saturday night for several hours, wear suits and ties, and different members would stand in front of the rest of the group and read something they'd written and be critiqued. They're doing this in high school.
Oh,
After the meeting was over, you took off your tie and your jacket and went out and raised a lot of hell and got drunk. Drinking club. Uh, yeah,
is aren't most clubs a drinking club
fair enough.
at the end of the day?
Yeah, a little more here. This is so cool. This is one of my favorite Hunter anecdotes. Uh, there's a reason his son's middle name is Fitzgerald.
Hmm.
Our guy from here in St. Paul, St. Paul's favorite son, F.
F.
Scott
Scott.
Fitzgerald. That's right. Hunter and I are, and Paul, this is Porter Bibb, Seminin hung out every day. We all believed we were Fitzgerald incarnate. Hunter was as passionate as the rest of us about this. This is when he started typing out Fitzgerald and Hemingway books word by word.
Wow.
I used to kid Hunter a lot and say, "You're not Fitzgerald. What the fuck are you typing The Great Gatsby for? That's the stupidest thing I've ever seen." You know, he said, "I just like to get the feel of how it is to write those words. I just took that as pure pretension." I love that. I don't know if
That's
people still do
amazing.
this. Isn't that smart though? That's smart as hell, isn't it?
Yeah.
Like I sometimes think about this too about how I remember quite distinctly the day that I was able to type as fast as I think and what
Hmm.
a breakthrough that was. And you take it for granted. I mean, if you're a writer, a professional writer, and you sit next to somebody who hunts and pecks, you go, "Oh, that's like I can't even imagine. I can't imagine." And it's not a smug thing.
I
It's just like
cannot I can't type as fast as I can think, but I can edit as fast as I can think.
you're a professional editor. But I mean, I just think it's brilliant. What a brilliant exercise to just get it into your bones, get that rhythm and that feeling into your
Well, and
bones.
it's one thing, I guess, reading something because I think it like warps and changes, and the words warp and change in your mind as you are reading them. But if you are actually kinetically typing them out, they're going to stick with you in a way that they wouldn't if you're just reading them.
Hmm. Yes. And this is a period of time too where we're talking about a typewriter. We're not
Mm,
talking about a like a computer where you can sort of quickly make adjustments and things. I mean, there's a
yeah.
real craft there that's just it's very analog and physical. All right, I want to read more from Porter Bibb. I love this. This is really interesting, and we're coming to a key inflection point here, and we'll get him into the Air Force. I was always amazed at Hunter's networking ability. He was solidly middle class, yet he was hanging with some multi millionaire families. Paul Seminen's family owned half of Louisville. They were the biggest real estate people around. My family was what we called name rich and land poor. We lost tremendous amounts of land in the Civil War, but we still acted like we had it. Most of the people that Hunter was close to and who brought him into their circle were very, very wealthy people. And Hunter didn't have a sow. Here he was with a single mom who had to work. We were
Mm.
traveling in the circle of people who virtually ran the city. And we were living very luxurious teen lives. There were debutante parties every other night in the summer and huge banquets and teas and brunches. If you couldn't figure out a way to steal a case of beer from somewhere, you just go over to one of the girls' houses. They all had unbelievable bars, and the parents were very liberal. But Hunter had friends in both high and low society. He took me to places in Louisville that I never would have known existed. We hung out in black nightclubs when it was still very segregated, got drunk, and did pretty much everything bad together. You'd see Hunter sometimes with 4 or 5 guys you'd never see in the social circles that he spent most of his time in. They were basically juvenile delinquents, and you knew they were going to end up as convicts for the rest of their lives. But they were doing something different from and something interesting, so we would go along with them. They never seemed to get in trouble, and I didn't worry about it because in Louisville, if you had connections, you're untouchable. I mean, I never bothered with taking a driving test to get my license. I just went down and told them my name, and they gave me my license. This is the old South, like turning into the
I
new
mean, he
South.
really was trying to be Gatsby, wasn't he?
I mean, it sounds like it. We all had fake IDs and fake licenses. They just seemed to appear when you needed them, and we were drinking from 14 on. 14 is a little young to start.
Yeah, that's gonna fry some
Yeah,
brain cells.
that's not good. Uh, but you really didn't even need the licenses because there was so much free alcohol everywhere. Every party at the country clubs, at the hotel ballrooms, it was all open to us. Not to 90% of the rest of the city, but it was totally open to us. Okay, and I want to tell one more little story here,
Hmm.
and then read a little bit of his writing, early writing. This is Paul Simonon. We did some street theater things. We didn't think of them as street theater at the time, of course. We just thought of them as hijinks, like the fake kidnapping in front of the Bard Theater over on Bardstown Road on the edge of the Highlands. Basically, we just got the idea of kidnapping a pal of ours from the ticket line and creating a scene. The guy, the kidnappee, was in on the joke, but we just grabbed him out of the line and stuffed him into a car and then drove off. He was screaming and resisting, of course, but we didn't anticipate that a local judge would be sitting in a restaurant across the street. He saw what happened and came running out of the restaurant after us as we were pulling away. We didn't know he was a judge until we read it in the Courier Journal the next morning. Suspected kidnapping at Bard Theater, but nobody got our license plate number and nothing ever came of it. Uh, and then he talks about becoming a performance artist. Very funny. Um, Porter Bibb says that he was very different from everybody else, and among other things, he saved every single thing that he wrote, which was way messier than it is now because it was before Xerox things, so he had to use carbon paper. Here's
Right.
his. He won third prize for this essay in the Athenaeum Spectator. Open letter to the youth of our nation. Young people of America, awake from your slumber of indolence and hearken to the call of the future. Do you realize that you are rapidly becoming a doomed generation? O ignorant youth, the world is not a joyous place. The time has come for you to dispense with the frivolous pleasures of childhood and get down to honest toil until you are 65. Then and only then can you relax and collect your social security and live happily until the time of your death. He signed it, fearfully and disgustedly yours, John J. Righteous Hypocrite. So there you go.
That was some cynicism for a teenager.
It's so hard to be around money when you don't have any.
Mm,
I mean, that's Fitzgerald, isn't it? And
yeah.
to because you know you'll never you truly cannot fake the funk. What did Fitzgerald say to Hemingway? The rich are different from us, and Hemingway said, "Yeah, they have money." I mean, that's the Fitzgerald felt it on a more acute level than Hemingway, and Hemingway always married money. That was Hemingway's
Yeah.
little move. But it's not often talked about, and in America, it's even more. I think it's even more extreme somehow
Mm.
because class and wealth are so tied together here. Um, working class, dead dad, mom works, and then you're going to these mansions, getting liquored up. You know what I mean? It's going to give you a sense of the iniquity of things. There was another feature in The Spectator called The Lineup, which was just a jokey questionnaire laid out in columns. Here's what they had to say about Hunter in 1953. Alias, Marlon Brando. Usually found, innocent, favorite saying, why was I fined? Reminds us of Dennis the Menace, ambition, be serious, future occupation, Undertaker. And in 54, his junior year, reminds us of Al Capone, usually found, cutting classes, favorite saying, Norvin did it. That was Norvin Green, who was the guy Hunter used to get to do stuff like, Norvin, I bet you can't steal her purse. Norvin, I bet you can't throw a fit. Ambition, peace officer. And then a little more about the drinking culture. There were basically two industries in the 50s in Louisville, tobacco and bourbon. And we knew the people who ran the Brown Forman distillery. They were part of our circle. Lee Brown, Martin Brown. Martin is now the president of Jack Daniels. But he grew up with, I got to call my sponsor. But he grew up with Hunter and me, and we'd hang out in their houses. If you needed a case of Jack Daniels or early times, it was always there because somebody's father worked at the distillery and got it. All right. This is Neville Blakemore. As Hunter got older, the stuff he did seemed to get more and more serious. You might say it switched from pranks to vandalism. There was a group that called themselves the Wreckers. Okay. I've always suspected Hunter was one of them, but it was never proven. That was behind two serious vandalism incidents in the east of town. They vandalized the Highland Presbyterian Church. They broke in and cut off the left sleeves of all the choir robes.
Oh
They
my
left a
God.
note. We're the wreckers and we're here to cause trouble.
Oh wow, they had a manifesto.
Yeah, I mean, they're just anarchists, little teenage anarchists. Um, we broke into liquor stores. We jimmy a lock or break a window. This is Porter Bibb. I never paid a hotel bill when I was with Hunter, etc. Paul Seminon. Hunter was a black sheep with the Athenaeum by 1955, his senior year. The Athenaeum was split between his partisans and the people who thought he was a disgrace, and they managed to vote him out. So he got voted out. Mm. And this is the big incident that would change the course of his life. I want to make sure I'm on track with my outline. I kind of fell into this
Hmm.
great. You see how great this is? It's so much fun. This Gonzo book. I just think it's the best.
I
Um,
love that people have so many first-hand accounts of his teenagehood.
oh, yeah, for sure. Fascinating stuff. Um, really, really fun. Okay. Neville Blakemore. Relston Steenrod, who was in the Athenaeum with Hunter and me, was driving, and Hunter and another friend Hunter knew from Castlewood were in the car. As they were driving through Cherokee Park, the guy said, Stop! I want to bum a cigarette from that car. People used to go park and neck at this spot, and he got out and apparently went back and mugged them. I don't know if he beat the guy up, and I don't know what he said or did, but he came back with the guy's billfold. I don't think Hunter and Steenrod had any idea what the guy was going to do. I don't even know if they knew what he had done when he got back in the car, because if they had, they could have tried to undo it. But the guy who was mugged got their license number and traced the car, and within a very short time, they were all three arrested. The police may have come down to Mail to take Hunter away in handcuffs. That happened at least one time, though that might have been the gas station robbery. Another incident. So this is we're out of hijinks territory. We're into crime.
Or it's crime.
Crime. There were three events in the spring of his senior year. This was the last. Just before this, he had been blamed for a nighttime gas station robbery, and before that, he and some friends got arrested for buying booze underage at Abe's liquor store on Frankfort Avenue by the tracks. I mean, if you're going to try to buy liquor underage, go to the liquor store by the tracks. It's just a little secret for you all, you know.
Yeah.
Generally down by the
The
tracks where you want to be.
wrong side of the tracks. They're
Literally,
getting
yeah.
arrested.
Yeah, yeah. Oh, my town had a wrong side of the tracks. Literally, we did. The town I grew up in, for sure, had a wrong side of the tracks. Really funny. So Hunter had a record, and he was already on probation for the other two things. He was given an alternative. There was a Judge Logan whose son George was in the Athenaeum with us, and Judge Logan went to Hunter's judge and said, "I know you've got to do something because you've already given him an ultimatum of one more time, and you're going to jail. But please give him the ultimatum of jail or the military." And Hunter took the Air Force. He didn't graduate with this class.
Mm.
All right. Nobody expected Hunter would have this sort of problem. I mean, I got caught by the cops many times for doing horrible things, but I'd just tell them who I was, and they'd say, "Well, you better shape
Oh,
up. You keep doing this, and you're going to get in trouble, and I'm going to tell your dad." But nothing ever happened. This is back when, like, the police knew who paid their checks. And if
right.
you the unspoken thing here is if you start messing with the sons of the well-heeled, they'll jam you up. Your career will end. You will get a
Wow,
bad
what's
reputation.
changed?
I don't really know. I don't Yeah, I don't really know. You're probably right. I mean, you can definitely, if you can afford a lawyer, you can, you know, like a good lawyer, you can definitely dodge some charges, or like beat some charges for sure.
Mm.
In any event, um, our best friend was the son of the mayor. The two other guys arrested with Hunter, well, one's father was the ex-DA of the city, and the other one's father was a very prominent lawyer. If I wanted to put a red light and a siren on my car, I would just tell the mayor's son, "Charlie, I want one of those things." It was that kind of a world, and Hunter was a part of that until the moment right at graduation when the other two guys got sprung by their fathers and Hunter's father wasn't there.
Well, that's the
No,
danger of running with the rich kids, isn't it?
nobody sprung Hunter. He was hung out to dry. So he spent time in jail. Hunter wrote, this is Doug Brinkley. Hunter wrote his mother these very philosophical letters from behind bars. They exude the desperation of a young man in jail looking for his freedom, as well as contemplating how the rich get away with every dastardly thing and the poor don't. That the
Mm.
buddies that he was with in Cherokee Park event were waltzing because they knew the judge, and that he was the poor kid on the other side of the railroad tracks with no dad. The game was fixed. She was an extraordinarily loving, giving mom. They were very, very close. Hunter was running amok and she didn't know what to do. She kept two of her sons fairly grounded. Hunter was the loose cannon. There was always a maternal disappointment that she had perhaps failed. Um, so let's see here. He was there in jail for a couple days in a sort of temporary holding cell. It wasn't even a real jail. He made up a lot of stuff about how terrifying it was and that he was worried about being attacked and everything. I think they called it Louisville Children's Detention Center. Then he had a choice given to him: go to juvenile prison or go into the military. And off he went. He hadn't even applied to college, and it was unique that he didn't. Everybody went to college in the circle he was in, most of them to Ivy League schools. Hunter would probably have been in the top 25 students out of 250. He didn't come to class a lot, but we all skipped around. I remember asking him, even before it all happened, "What the fuck are you going to do?" I mean, he could have gone to the University of Louisville or the University of Kentucky almost for free. And he said, "I don't know, something. I'll figure something out." And this is Luann. Hunter was sent to jail for 90 days right before graduation, and at that point I really lost touch with him. As I was getting ready to go down to the jail to see him, my mother actually forbade me to do so. Then his
Mm.
probation officer got him released early with the understanding that he would go into the service. So Hunter got out of jail and literally went to the bus station, got on the bus, and went into the Air Force. All right,
Oh
and
my
that's
gosh.
that's part
Well,
one of the life of Hunter Thompson.
I mean, I guess for his mother, if his father was the disciplinarian for the majority of his growing up before high school, and she probably didn't have to do any of that for all of those years because he took care of that, and then, suddenly he's dead. and she has to be everything to these boys, and she's grieving. Like, yeah, how do you just suddenly slot into that role and expect them to respect you in that way?
Right, and you're a librarian, and
Mm.
you lose this income. It's not a small thing, and
Hmm.
you're in still in kind of the South in the 50s, and this, and it's this Eisenhower America, you know, and it's there are things that men do and things that women do,
Yeah.
and the men deal with the teenage boys, and the judge was showing mercy and
Mm.
probably some wisdom, saying, listen,
Yeah,
you go.
because he needed that discipline. So yeah, give him to the military.
Sure. I mean, and what if he had gone into prison and then he gets into the system and then he comes out and then he's drinking in Louisville? Like, I think Hunter would have found
Mm.
his way regardless. But um, in
I
any
do
case, yeah,
like that quote about the literature being what saved him from just being an outright criminal.
I confess to finding that highly relatable. Like, I sometimes think about, no, I mean, I'm sure I'm not alone in this. Like, art is like this saving thing, this thing that
Mm.
forces you to get out of your. Again, it's like an empathy gym.
Yeah.
It's very, very hard to be artistically inclined in a literary way and to be too crazy. Like, it really can save your life for sure. Gives you something, connects you to the broader world, you
Mm.
know, instead of just thinking about your next bottle of gin, which, hey, you can also be thinking about
Yeah.
that too. But you're thinking about F. Scott Fitzgerald. You're thinking about Hemingway. You're thinking about words and the magic that words can weave and how you can change the world with them in a small way, and how you can get some of that power back from your father dies, you feel
Mm.
so powerless, but what can you do in jail? You can write your mother a letter. You
Yeah.
can communicate that way. Yeah,
Well, and exposing you to stories that are beyond the town that you grow up in, that there is a
sure,
bigger world out there.
totally. And I'm sure he would have said that, Louisville at the time probably felt very provincial.
Mm.
So, Abby, can you vamp for 60 seconds while I stand up and use the little boys' room here? Can you tell people the dates in London again for the show we're doing? And if you have any prep going on for Milligan or whatever, I don't know, tease that. I'll be right back.
Sure, of course. So, coming up, we have our live show on Francisco Goya. That is happening at Verderin, which is in East London, and that's going to be on the 24th of May, 24th of March, sorry. Tickets are £8. So come along and hang out with us live while we talk about Francisco Goya's demons, the black paintings that he had, him being one of the biggest Spanish artists that there are. And then quite soon after, I will have my Spike Milligan episode come up. I'm only just starting to prep for that. Spike Milligan was a very interesting and funny character in British literary and TV life, and I'm super excited to share his life with you. So yeah, that's coming up as well. I'm mostly doing the Goya prep at the moment, and reading about that time in Spain has been very interesting. There's not it's I hadn't thought about it before, I guess, but there are not a lot of famous Spanish artists that are considered to sort of be great masters,
Yeah,
and
it's going to
Goya
be a
is
lot of
one of them.
fun.
Yeah.
Maybe, I don't want to turn this into a production meeting, but I really maybe you do a little history lesson there, because I'm sure we're going to want the context of the period.
Yeah.
I feel like for Hunter, we're kind of getting that out of
Yes.
this, and a lot of always a fun thing to do on Art of Darkness. I love thinking about different periods of time and
Mm.
how life has changed and how they haven't, how things haven't. All right. So let's get into the second part of Hunter Thompson here. I'm going to move this along. Let me get my outline back up. All right. So Hunter enlisted in the Air Force and began basic training at Lackland Air Force Base in San Antonio, Texas. From there, he transferred to Scott Air Force Base in Illinois, where he studied electronics. Thompson had ambitions of becoming a pilot, but his application to the Air Force's aviation cadet program was rejected. In 1956, he was stationed at Eglin Air Force Base in Florida, where he took evening classes at Florida State University, famous party school. It was at Eglin that Thompson landed his first professional writing job as sports editor for the Command Courier, the base newspaper. He secured the position by lying about his experience, a move that would become characteristic of his early career. In this role, he traveled around the country with the Eglin Eagles football team, covering their games. He also moonlighted as a columnist for the Playground News, a local paper in Fort Walton Beach, though his name never appeared in print due to Air Force regulations prohibiting outside employment. So I've got a few of his letters here. I want to hear more of his voice. This is from The Proud Highway, Hunter S. Thompson, The Saga of a Desperate Southern Gentleman. And let me find the letter that I want to read. Da, da, da. Make sure I'm reading the right one. Where are we? I think that's the wrong one. Let me find it.
He was really bouncing around at this
Oh
time.
my gosh, it's going to be you haven't seen the outline, but it is just it's mad. I mean, he will by the time we're done here, he will be in Puerto Rico, he's in Florida,
Hmm.
New York, Puerto Rico, South America somewhere, California, and then he would finally end up in Colorado.
Wow.
Yeah, he moved around a lot. I lose track of the timeline myself.
Yeah.
So this is a letter he wrote to Joe Bell, and this is a fictional story to illustrate his quite real despair. Okay. Dear Joe, in the midst of the Power Elite book, after a pleasant dinner of meatballs and beans and looking forward to an evening of welcome silence, I paused to tap out a letter of puzzlingly pleasant despair. Now, pleasant despair is none too subtle a paradox, and it fits my present situation to a T. I'm all of 2 weeks older than I was on December 1st, and about 5 years the wiser. The thunderous wave of optimism on which I rode to my greatest triumph went crashing to an ignominious death on the rocks of reality at approximately 3:30 p.m. on December 9th. For at that time, I, fresh from an historic victory over the United States Air Force's Strategic Complacency and Indifference Command, rode triumphantly over the hill into Jersey Shore, Pennsylvania. With a smile of grim but tolerant superiority plastered habitually on my once suntanned visage, I looked about for the myriad thousands I had come to dazzle with my pregnant prose. Suddenly, I felt a terrible, blinding, choking sensation. Frantically, I scrambled to roll up my windows. I had driven into a cloud of coal dust. Screeching to a stop, I seized my meat hatchet and leaped from my car, certain that the Syrians had touched off World War III with a gas attack. I tensed to meet the shock of the first wave of Mongolian paratroopers. Come on, you bastards, I screamed. I knew you were coming. I told Bell last week. I didn't even order any Christmas cards, but I'll take a few of you with me before I go. And so forth. He's writing a letter to a friend, and it's this crazy, like, what are we doing here? You know? So it's hints of the future Gonzo that
Right.
we're going to see. He clearly hasn't, quote unquote, found his voice or whatever you want to say. It's not quite there yet, and it's definitely try hard and kind of riddled with cliches, but he's working. And that's a
Yeah.
throwaway letter to a friend. That's something that his friend probably, hopefully, must have saved.
Is,
You gotta,
yes, probably laughed. Like, how the hell do you reply to that?
right?
Dear
Yeah. What do
Hunter.
you? Well,
Yeah, I took some classes at Yale last week.
yeah, here's a little more,
Yeah.
right? Were I to return to Louisville, especially for the holiday revelry, it would all amount to a regression of damaging proportions. Naturally, I shall miss being there for Christmas, even more so because I know I can leave this place at any time. But Louisville to me is a merry-go-round, with all the ups and downs and the conversational carnival music of the Fountain Fairy original. Admittedly, the ride can be pleasant if you don't mind the rhythmic repetition of a never-ending maypole dance. If I come home now, I'd hit the merry-go-round at one of the annual frenzied peaks, and like so many others, I could forget the existence of anything but the ride, sleepwalking through the low spots and always looking forward to the next peak. He was talking about the Louisville social scene. And
Yeah.
I wonder if he could even go home and show face. Like,
Yeah, I mean, he's gonna get in trouble on that merry-go-round.
I think so. Yeah. Okay. All right. So by 1958, Thompson had made an impression, but not necessarily a good one. His commanding officer, Colonel William S. Evans, acknowledged his talent, but found his attitude disruptive. In a memo to the personnel office, Evans wrote, "In summary, this airman, although talented, will not be guided by policy. Sometimes his rebel and superior attitude seems to rub off on other airmen staff members."
Yeah, I
Soon,
was I was wondering how prankster Hood was going to go down in the Air Force.
yeah, it from the sound, I'm not going to dwell on this section too much, but from the sound of it, he kind of found his niche. And if you can write well about the football and report well on
Mm,
the football, the commanding officers and some status, right? This kid knows ball, and he's following our Eagles around the as we whoop on those Army boys, and or this and that, and there's something to that. But
mm.
you know, soon after, Thompson was granted an early honorable discharge, bringing his brief military career to an end. After leaving the Air Force, he took a job as the sports editor for a small newspaper in Jersey Shore, Pennsylvania.
Hmm.
But he had bigger ambitions and soon relocated to New York City, where he audited courses at Columbia University School of General Studies to support. And later, like he would play that up, so. There's going to be a huge passage in this where he runs for the sheriff of Aspen, Colorado. This is
Okay.
very famous. Yeah, it was called the Battle of Aspen. And he kind of like single-handedly changed the culture of the city, and because it was during the sort of hippie transition, and the current sheriff, or like the existing sheriff, was a hard ass and would mess with people. You
Mm.
you look like a dope smoker, kid. We're gonna put you in jail. And I actually had a roommate in New York City who would. I don't know if she ever met Hunter, but she would hang out at the same bar that he was famous at. I mean, there's never been a more famous Aspenite.
Right.
But he would run for sheriff, and one of his planks there was that he wanted to change the name of Aspen to Fat City in order to prevent the speculators from coming in and building new real estate, and then flipping real estate. And he was very
Yeah, no one
he
wants to live in Fat City.
no one wants to live in Fat City. Well, the locals wouldn't care. That was his joke. It's only the land speculators and anyway. Um, the Rum Diary and his wife. After leaving the Air Force, Hunter, like I said, okay, I already said that. Columbia,
Mhm.
to support himself, he worked as a copy boy at Time magazine. Time. Totally not propaganda. Time magazine.
We all got to
Um,
start somewhere, right?
Sheesh. Copy boy. So they would literally run copy back and forth. Um, let's see here. Oh yeah, okay. So this is someone named Gene McGar. Must be an associate from that period. I was living on the Lower East Side between the Bowery and Second Avenue on the fifth floor. It was so bad that you could have cardiac arrest by the time you got up the stairs. I never locked my apartment door because I had nothing to steal. And if anybody actually wanted to climb those 5 flights, he deserved whatever he could steal. Hunter comes up one night with a few other people to visit me, and I'm not there. I'm out driving a cab, and I don't get any sense of what happened until the next day. He's in there sitting with his friends and waiting for me and drinking beer, and at one point he gets up and takes his belt off. It's a hot summer night, and all the windows are open all over the block, including mine. And Hunter starts whipping the wall, and he'd whip and then scream, "Yeah!" Whip, "Yeah!" Whip, "Yeah!" It was loud. Everybody on the block could hear this, and every now and then he'd stop and he'd go, "Do it again, do it again. Whip.
Oh
Ah,
no.
you can't do that, you son of a bitch." Of course, to the neighbors, it's an outrage, a fucking outrage. Somebody calls the police, and two beefy cops come bounding up 5 flights of stairs. They probably had apoplexy by the time they got to my apartment and pound on the door. Cops come in. What the hell is going on? They check everybody for marks, but nobody has any marks on them. They're sitting quietly drinking beer at the kitchen table. So there was nothing to be done about it. No law being broken, nothing violated. They just split. I came home that night at about 3 o'clock in the morning, and I don't know what happened. There's a note. We waited for you, but you weren't home from Hunter. The next day, as I'm coming up the stairs with a bag of groceries, I meet this Chinese guy from just below me. We'd always gotten along fairly well. Good morning, good evening, smiles, pleasantries. I think I borrowed some salt from him once, but he's coming down as I'm going up, and as I approach him, he flattens against the wall, shoots me this horrible look, and starts mumbling in Chinese. And I'm wondering what the fuck is wrong with him. And later hears about the story and he knows what happened. So, pretty funny. Let's see here. Um, this is Gene talking about the drug use. Oh, and oh God, I got to talk about this where he was living. This is so amazing. Hunter's place on Perry Street was 2 blocks up from the Riviera Bar and a fairly nice apartment house for Greenwich Village. It was a step above a tenement, but he was in the boiler room in the basement. Just an outrageous cave. I mean, the first time you brought a girl down there, it was holy shit, because you
Oh
went
no.
down the back rickety stairs and into the backyard, and you had to be very careful, particularly at night, to not strangle yourself on the clotheslines, which were all at about throat level if you were tall. You ducked under those and you got to this door. And when you opened the door, the first thing you'd see were the flames coming out of the boiler, the furnace, because the door was slightly broken and it wouldn't shut completely. The flames were dancing on the walls all around you. And the first door right next to the furnace was Hunter's apartment. I That's a bad apartments in New York, but nothing that bad. Hey, it's the
No, that's
village.
like serial killer
Yeah,
territory.
yeah, yeah. It's like a movie. It gets even better though, because guess what Hunter does? Hunter painted the entire interior black, ceiling, walls, everything totally black, just to add to the atmosphere, presumably. The only way you could tell whether it was night or day when you woke up was one whole wall was barred windows that opened up on an air shaft, and you had to get on your back and press your head against the bars to look up. And there was a little triangle of the sky that you could see at the top of the air shaft. If it was blue, it was day. I had been smoking marijuana since I was 12 or so, but marijuana was the first thing that Hunter and I did together. He didn't do it that much and we weren't out looking for it, but if somebody turned up with some marijuana, we'd smoke it. The first time Hunter ever smoked, he got sick as a dog. Later on, we did a lot of cocaine, a lot of acid. We kind of discovered a lot of it together. Something would come along and we would try it. I think I was the one to introduce him to mescaline. He loved mescaline. His poster for his sheriff campaign was a fist clutching a peyote button with two
Oh.
thumbs. You know, it was freak power. That was his thing. His whole thing was freak. Again, when the going gets weird, the weird turn pro. Let's see here. He tried to get me into adrenaline, shots of adrenaline. I don't know where he got the stuff from. He once stuck a hypodermic full of adrenaline into his ankle, and by accident he hit an artery, and a
Oh my
needle-like
God.
thickness of blood just hit the wall of the room. He was a
No.
gorilla for a while once it kicked in, but at the same time scared shitless because this stream of blood was an awesome thing to see. He had to go to the hospital because it wouldn't stop. So
Oh,
yeah, I've always drawn the line at needles. I'll just say
yeah,
that
that's
much. That's
bad.
draw the line. That is some heavy drug use. I'm shooting adrenaline into my ankle, right? Um, so let's see here. I want to,
The uh the
yeah,
completely blacked out room with very little view of the sky sounds perfect for somebody who doesn't get up till 3 o'clock in the afternoon,
sure.
though.
For the night owl. Yeah, I'm just gonna stay in here
Yeah.
and I'm gonna do drugs and I'm gonna occasionally bring a woman back and I'm gonna hide and I'm gonna write.
Try not to get burned by the furnace.
Right. Yeah. Here's a fascinating story. This is Gene McGar still. Let me see if I see who this is, because I'm reading quite a bit from them. I want to respect their name. The list of people is wild. At the back of this book, he was a copy boy at Time magazine. He was Hunter's roommate.
Hmm.
Okay. All right. One night, hot as shit, July, 100 degrees and 99% humidity, and it's midnight. We're with our girlfriends and we can't stand Hunter's apartment anymore, so we decide to go down to the Leroy Street pool a few blocks away. We climb over the fence, boosting the girls, and we strip down to our skivvies and jump into the water and swim around. And God, it's cool. But all of a sudden, over the fence come these five guys, local guineas, who decide his word, not mine. I don't need the League of Columbus to come and give me a hard time. Listen, in this house, Christopher Columbus is a Jewish Italian hero. You hear this? That Christopher Columbus was Jewish? Did you hear
I
this?
did not know that. No.
Look it up. I don't think I'm making it up. In any event, his word, not mine. Who decided that this is their turf? Okay, so remember the race war from earlier? Well, here we
Oh,
go
yeah.
again, but now it's the
Uh-oh.
Italians. Um, they start throwing our clothes in the water, and I start to get out of the water. But my future wife, Eleanor, gets there first and starts yelling like shit about throwing the clothes in the water. And these guys immediately turn to me, get around me, and start pegging me. So I start moving fast and pegging back at them. I don't know what he means by pegging. Like, I guess kind of squaring
I
up for
mean,
a fight, maybe. That word doesn't mean what.
no.
Yeah, that word has a new meaning. Um,
Yeah. Ask
and then
Prince William.
along. Yeah, okay, all right, Abby. I'm getting ready to go through customs over there, Abby. I'm going over to see the crown jewels. I've got
Uh-huh.
nothing to report. I've got nothing to declare. No, you can't see my Twitter account,
So,
officer.
apparently, DNA analysis suggests that Christopher Columbus may have been a Sephardic Jew from Western Europe,
Hmm.
likely Valencia, Spain.
Fascinating, right?
Hmm.
Interesting. All right. So so here comes Hunter into this fight. He jumps on one of the guy's backs and beats the shit out of him, and then he grabs another one. Between the two of us, we drive them back over the fence. We gather all our clothes up and we figure we'd better get the hell out of there. But before we're finished, over the fence come 10 guys right at us. Well, it's another melee, but now there are too many of them. I'm getting hit, Hunter's getting hit, but somehow or another we drive them off. We finally put our clothes together and turn around to leave. And behind the fence we just came over must be 50 of them. I told my wife, you and Connie, I think it was Connie, you get over the fence and don't look back. I don't think they're going to bother you. They want us. Run for 7th Avenue and do whatever you can to find a cop. Run like hell. So they go over the fence, and then Hunter and I gathered ourselves. Hunter was brave as a lion. He waded right in. There was no fucking around. They started wailing, and we started wailing. They started hitting me with bottles, and in the meantime, I can't see what's going on with Hunter. Thank God it only lasted about a minute. Somebody had called the cops, and the cops were right there. If the fight had lasted 2 minutes, both Hunter and I would have been dead.
And this is at a pool?
This was just at a pool on a hot summer night in New York City, and the I don't know where this
Wow.
Gene guy is, but yeah, and so the cops got an ambulance to take us to St. Vincent's Hospital. There was so much broken glass on both of us. They have to put us in this big room and hose little pieces of glass off of us. They have to
Oh
sew
my
up a cut
gosh.
over my eye and a cut above my right elbow. We get dressed, and as instructed, we go down to the precinct station house. They ask us, what are we doing at the pool? And I say, oh shit, it was a hot night. We climbed over the fence to go swimming. They say, look, if you press charges against them, they're going to press charges against you, and then we're going to have to keep you all in jail. I said, I'll tell you what, just give us a head start and we'll leave. And Hunter was a wreck the next day. Fortunately, he had this lovely girl to take care of him. He started carrying a knife after that, a big Bowie
Wow.
knife or something like that. I suggested brass knuckles, but he liked the idea of showing a big blade. All right.
Oh my
So
gosh.
fun stuff. He's going to take another famous beating. The most famous beating of his life is going to happen when he writes his first major book on the Hells Angels. We'll talk about
Mm.
we'll talk about that. Um, so yeah, different times, different times. Yeah.
Yeah.
Uh,
So
yeah.
wait, why did this happen? Was this group in charge of the pool, or
They
they
decided
just saw
it's just
these guys
it's just
go
a
in
turf
and
thing. Yeah, it's just a turf
Turf
thing.
war.
What are you doing? What are you
Okay.
doing? What are these? I don't know where this guy is from, but Hunter, some guy with a Kentucky accent, is
Yeah.
swimming in, with his girls in our pool after hours. That's our
Right.
pool. This is like hood stuff. I mean, and also like boredom.
Yeah.
Like, we like to fight. We run around in mobs and like to fuck guys up. Like, why not? Why not? I mean, I've seen Warriors come out and play. I mean, it's New York City. What do you want? I don't know
Yeah,
what to
I
tell you.
mean, a guy I used to work with would say that as a teenager or like a man in his early 20s, it was like when the club got out at the in the middle of the night, if you didn't have a girl, you were looking for a fight.
Yeah.
I was like, wow, it's just a very different life being a woman.
Yeah, I think there's this tendency to sort of think that like women are have to fear the night more than men, but men can you can get into plenty of trouble. Different things will happen to you. Of course, that's the
Mm.
great fear, right? But yeah, no, you definitely have to keep your head on a swivel. Um, in any event, I've got a little more here about his typing out the books. Okay, so Johnny Depp in 2011 told The Guardian, Hunter typed The Great Gatsby? He'd look at each page Fitzgerald wrote and he copied it, the entire book, and more than once because he wanted to know what it felt like to write a masterpiece. This exercise prepared him to write One, or his cracked version of One, 1972's Gonzo account of a more than quixotic road trip, fear and loathing in Las Vegas. He points out, some fellow points out that Thompson first called the book The Death of the American Dream, likely inspired by Fitzgerald's first Gatsby title, The Death of the Red, White, and Blue.
Mm.
Thompson referred to Gatsby frequently in books and letters. Just as often, he referenced another literary hero, Hemingway. He first began typing out Gatsby while employed at Time magazine as a copyboy in 1958, one of many magazines and newspaper jobs in a pattern of disruptive employment. This is from his biographer, Kevin T. McEnany. Thompson appropriated armloads of office supplies for the task and also typed out Hemingway's A Farewell to Arms and some of Faulkner's stories, an unusual method for learning prose rhythm. He was fired the following year, not for misappropriation, but for his unpardonable, insulting wit at the Christmas party. So fun. Got to be
Oh
careful with
no,
this.
what did he say at the Christmas party?
Mhm. All right. So we're in the late 50s, 1959. He was fired for insubordination. That same year, Thompson landed a reporting job at the Middletown Daily Record in upstate New York. His tenure was short lived, as he was soon fired for damaging a candy machine and clashing with a local restaurant owner who happened to be an advertiser at the paper. All right, so I've got a little bit more here from the Proud Highway. Um, yeah, I think the candy machine like ate his money or something, and he destroyed it. And this is
Very
Will.
low impulse control.
I mean, what's probably it's actually probably a good moment for me to read the drug regime.
Mm.
Why don't I do that? William Kennedy was the managing editor of Puerto Rico's San Juan Star in 1959. Kennedy has published many novels, including Ironweed, which won the Pulitzer Prize. He's the fellow who wrote this introduction, and then I'll read the drug regime. By the late summer 1959, Hunter Thompson had kicked in the candy machine at the Middletown, New York Daily Record, had been fired for being too offbeat, and was looking for work. He answered an ad in editor and publisher for a sports editor job at the brand new daily San Juan Star. He was 22, but represented himself as 24. He said the job interested him because it was in Puerto Rico, outside the great Rotarian democracy of the mainland. Sorry. That's just so good. He mentioned his Middletown troubles and also said he was lecturing on the meaning of the Beat Generation. I have given up on American journalism, he wrote. The decline of the American press has long been obvious, and my time is too valuable to waste in an effort to supply the man in the street with his daily quota of cliches. There's another concept of journalism. It's engraved on a bronze plaque on the southeast corner of Times Tower in New York City. He added that he now had to get back to his novel, part of which was with the Viking Press in New York. The novel's called King Jellyfish, and I don't know that it ever. I think it might have been published posthumously. I'd have to look. Here's the bronze plaque he was citing from Joseph Pulitzer. An institution that should always fight for progress and reform, never tolerate injustice or corruption, always fight demagogues of all parties, never belong to any party, always oppose privileged classes and public plunderers, never lack sympathy with the poor, always remain devoted to the public welfare, never be satisfied with merely printing news, always be drastically independent, never be afraid to attack wrong, whether by predatory plutocracy or predatory poverty. All right. As managing editor of the fledgling Star, I wrote him explaining that our editor was a member of the Rotary. You know about the Rotary
The
Club?
Rotary
Yeah,
Club. Yeah.
yeah. That we had a staff of
We have
offbeat.
that one too.
Okay, yeah. That we had a staff of offbeat reporters and editors who, like him, were writing fiction and suggested he return to his novel or perhaps start another, building his plot around the bronze plaque on the Times Tower. You should always write about something you know intimately, I wrote, and added that if we ever got a candy machine and needed someone to kick it in, we'd be in touch. He received my letter at his home in Louisville in the same mail that brought Viking's rejection of his novel, and he sat down and wrote me, "Your letter was cute, my friend, and your interpretation of my letter was beautifully typical of the cretin intellect responsible for the dry rot of the American press. But I don't think that lack of an invitation from you will keep me from getting down that way. And when I do, remind me to first kick your teeth in and then jam a bronze plaque far into your small intestine." I wrote back saying that since he was the bushy-tailed expert on journalism's dry rot, we would pay him space rates to summarize its failings in 3 double-spaced pages that we would run in our first edition, along with our exchange and correspondence. I said I didn't know another publication that would give him the time of day and signed it intestinally yours. His reply. So you've got this older newsman and you've got this young buck, and they're just talking shit back and forth in letters. And like at some point along the way, he's offered a job, sort of. Like it's a different time. Um, his reply, Daddy-o, you mean the bronze plaque paragraph bugged you? I don't mind saying, friend Kennedy, that I enjoyed your letter. This is a weird bit of correspondence we have here, my man. Um, and then it goes on. Uh, He said that I was a tragic optimist if I thought it was possible to handle the dry rot in 3 pages, and he assumed my offer was designed to develop a ceremonial mangling of a jabbering beatnik. Even so, he said he would give it a fling, which he did. Dear Hack, he wrote, in closing with his letter a one-act play. A brutal, low-level sledgehammer drama. A farce, of course, but its theme is a big one. He also said my last letter had surprised him, and perhaps in the long run I shall owe you an apology for all this abuse. I rejected his play as warmed over cliches with barnyard overtones and wished him well with his book, noting he'd be better off away from journalism if he was serious about the novel, and suggesting he stop by for a drink if he was in the neighborhood. He responded with a page of revenge. They're having so much fun. Uh, don't expect me to send you a package of platitudes to drape over the stinking carcass of your newspaper like an American flag over a coffin full of crap, he added. I imagine you're pretty decent in your own way, and I think it's a shame that you've hired yourself out as a mouthpiece for the International Rotary. And less than 2 months later, he applied to Sportivo, a new bowling magazine in San Juan. I may have the chance of duping the editor into thinking I'm normal. So he gets down. He gets down to San Juan. He was kicked out of 2 houses. Eventually, found one on a deserted beach, and he brought down his fiancee, Sandy. I can barely support myself, much less a common law wife, he wrote her. So I presume you'll bring at least a little money for food.
Oh no. So,
She,
Prince Jellyfish remains unpublished, but a short excerpt was published in Songs of the Doomed,
The first novel.
the
Yeah.
first novel. Yeah.
Hmm. I wonder.
Apparently, an autobiographical novel about a boy from Louisville going to the big city and struggling against the dunces to make his way.
Ah, yes, that novel. Uh, yeah. Well, he would work on the Rum Diary here
Mm.
now, which I actually think is a fine read. I really enjoy it. Um, so the time I saw Johnny Depp in person, me and Johnny, we go way back,
Oh,
was
yeah.
he's probably in any event, but he came to a screening of the Rum Diary,
Mm.
which was directed by the fellow who directed Withnell and I. And at some point, and of course, the movie was very middling. It's sort of eh. I have a sense that they might want it back. It just I
Right.
don't know. It just wasn't quite right. Um, but it was directed
Bruce
by
Robinson.
Bruce Robinson, and Depp shouted out Withnell and I was the only person in a group of like 1,000 Americans who was like whooping for Withnell and I because of course it's a complete banger. Um, so I was proud of that, and I remember just how I've never seen anybody. That's the closest I'll ever get to Beatlemania. Like
Right.
they were like they had to be kept away from Depp. You know, like it was crazy. And then I guess Depp and his band played somewhere in Austin later. I mean, geez. But still worth watching. I would say, read the book. Read the book. Okay.
Hmm.
Okay. All right. At some point in here, he's in California too, and I'm not
He just got
100%
there.
right. I'm not 100% certain of the timeline. Um, well, let me try to get this in order. Uh, let me see. In 1960, Thompson set his sights on Puerto Rico, moving there to work for the sports magazine El Sportivo. Unfortunately, the magazine folded soon after his arrival. There's not a huge readership for a bowling magazine in San Juan. I mean
Oh, why not?
that sounds like money laundering. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Right? That somebody was, moving money around. Seeking another opportunity, he applied for a position at the San Juan Star, an English language daily, but was rejected by William J. Kennedy, who would later become a Pulitzer Prize winning novelist. How funny is that? Despite the rejection, Kennedy and Thompson struck up a friendship. Thompson stayed on the island, working as a freelance correspondent for the New York Herald Tribune and other stateside papers, covering uh, Caribbean affairs with Kennedy as his editor. I want to make sure I get the Rum Diary in here. Yeah, that's coming up. Okay, so I've got another letter from the Proud Highway. Um, oh, I said I was going to read his drug regimen, so let me do that.
Yes.
I don't know that he was into this drug regimen at this point. I think this was more fully realized Hunter in Owl Creek or whatever it is, Woody Creek out in Aspen. But I just want to,
Once he's experimented with all the different things and decided the ones that work best for him.
yeah, I think this is just sort of like, well, and I think this is a maybe slightly trumped up, but this is from Mental Floss by Chris Higgins, November 8, 2022. But it's really a book of, in her book, Hunter, The Strange and Savage Life of Hunter S. Thompson, biographer E. Jean Carroll starts the first chapter with a detailed account of the excess of her subject. Uh, and this is from the book. So much fun. And this is a 1993 biography. Uh, Here it is. 3 p.m. Rise. 3:05. Chivas Regal with the morning papers. Dunhills. 3:45. Cocaine. 3:50. Another glass of Chivas. Dunhill. 4:05. First cup of coffee. Dunhill. 4:15. Cocaine. 4:16. Orange juice. Dunhill. 4:30. Cocaine. 4:54. Cocaine. 5:05. Cocaine. 5:11. Coffee. Dunhills. 5:30. More ice in the Chivas. 5:45, cocaine, etc., etc. 6, grass to take the edge off the day.
Oh my God.
7:05, Woody Creek Tavern for lunch. Heineken, two margaritas, coleslaw, a taco salad, a double order of fried onion rings, carrot cake, ice cream, a bean fritter, Dunhills, another Heineken, cocaine, and for the ride home, a snow cone, a glass of shredded ice over which is poured 3 or 4 jiggers of Chivas. 9, starts snorting cocaine seriously. 10, drops acid. 11, chartreuse, cocaine, grass. 11:30, cocaine, etc., etc. Midnight, Hunter S. Thompson is ready to write. Midnight 05 to 6 a.m. Chartreuse, cocaine, grass, Chivas, coffee, Heineken, clove cigarettes, grapefruit, Dunhills, orange juice, gin, continuous pornographic movies. 6, the hot tub champagne, Dove bars. This always kills me. Fettuccine Alfredo. 8, Halcyon. 8:20, sleep. 8:20 a.m. and then 3 p.m. rise.
Wow.
That's the regime. Eh, Yeah,
If you were to do that in 2025, how much would a day like that cost you?
that's another good point. I think Hunter probably had the connect, right?
Hmm.
And he was the man in Aspen, the biggest fish in the pond, and
Yeah.
that's a moneyed city, right? People go there to ski and they have second homes. You read a lot of
Mm,
biographies of bankers, and it's so and so lives in the Hamptons and Aspen. It's that kind of a
yeah.
place. Uh, but yeah, that would not be cheap. At least a $200 regime a day. It's a habit.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm guessing these are like rails of cocaine too. I'm guessing these aren't little key bumps. I think he's probably
It's a
getting it in.
proper line of cocaine.
Woo! So that's where this is heading. And of course, retweets are not endorsements. This is this ends in suicide, right?
Yeah.
And he becomes pretty estranged from his son at one point.
Well,
And
and I think you really have to be building up like in your life to be able to have a day like that. If I were to try that out tomorrow, I'd be dead.
yeah, yeah, you would no longer be co-hosting the Art of Darkness podcast. You would probably end up in the hospital or in rehab for
Yeah.
sure. Yeah. Um, and again, it's very tempting to glamorize this.
Mm.
That's not actually very glamorous. It's actually sort of
No.
awful. Um,
It's really quite disgusting,
it
actually.
actually is. Yeah, that's the habit of somebody who has needs help. I mean, and we
Yeah.
may have had him for another 10 years if he had gotten the help that he needed. But also, that just was not who he was.
No. I
And I'm
mean,
not
he
gonna.
he clearly had from a young age, like that whole sort of charisma and pranking and that type of thing. He had like a really overactive mind. And I mean, what kind of world do you have to live in to for that to feel balanced?
Right. Right. Yeah. And then, there's this ugly thing with chemicals and addiction where uh, the psychological habit bleeds into the physical habit,
Mm,
and you can't quite separate them at a certain point. Like that's a guy who, if he just stopped drinking, would have had to go to the hospital. He would have
mhm.
needed medical detox under supervision, like for sure. And who knows if it's unclear to me if he ended up in the hospital at some point for it,
Yeah.
if he
And
just never stopped.
you weave all of that into your persona as a writer and
Right. They say too that he didn't like other people, like his intimates. He didn't like them to be fucked up, like his
right.
wives. You know what I mean? So, all right.
Well, he
So
didn't like his mother to be drunk,
right
so that
there
makes
you are.
sense.
Exactly. Yeah. Um, let's see. Well, no, I think I can move forward here. All right. So after returning to the mainland in 1961, Thompson made his way to California. He spent time in San Francisco before moving to Big Sur, where he took a job as a security guard at Slate's Hot Springs just before it became the Esalen Institute. Do you know what the Esalen Institute
No, I
is?
do not. What is the Esalen
The
Institute?
Esalen Institute, I believe, is still there. You can go. It's a leading center for exploring human potential.
Oh.
It's one of these like here, and I'm not mocking anybody, right? But here's
hmm
what they've got going on in March: nurturing connections through the art of repair. Meta and the divine abodes, meditation, yoga, and the wisdom to live a better life. The body of belonging, an exploration of community and connection. Here's what Esalen Institute is about. You go to their about page. Okay. Do you know that the end of Mad Men, where Draper realizes he
Yeah.
can sell California
Oh, yeah.
back to everybody out east? This is it.
Buy the
This
world of
is
Coke.
these people are going to buy the world of Coke.
This sounds
Um,
like a cult.
Esalen is a creative laboratory, an incubator of human potential, asking the daring and curious questions that traditional university and religious institutions can't and or won't. 1962 marked the beginning of this extraordinary journey, an adventure of minds, bodies, spirits, and souls, where Michael Murphy and Richard Price, who knew Thompson knew them, young
hmm
Stanford graduates were inspired by the ideas of Abraham Maslow and Aldous Huxley, together founded Esalen, the birthplace of the human potential movement. Today, more than 6 decades later, Esalen is a world renowned holistic learning and global retreat center for guests and faculty to explore and realize their human potential through experience, education, and research. Public workshop and private conference programming pushes our growth edges closer toward collectively living in a more just, creative, and sustainable world. And what is the human potential movement, you ask?
Mm.
Let's Let's ask the internet. What is the human potential movement? It arose out of the counterculture of the 60s and formed around the concept of an extraordinary potential that its advocates believed to lie largely untapped in all people. I can get behind that. I just think it's very strange because this is where Hunter like Ginsburg is around. Like now we're in that realm of like one of the things we say in Art of Darkness that there are only like 25,000 people alive at any given time. Like this is
Yeah.
very much that. Like now suddenly Hunter is around names all the time. It's very unusual. Um, so yeah, right. Big Sur was a refuge for artists and intellectuals, including Thomas novelist Henry Miller, whom Thomas admired. It was during this time that he published his first magazine feature, a piece for Rogue about Big Sur's bohemian culture. He also completed his first novel, The Worthy Rum Diary. I would say it's not a great novel, but it is a good novel. It is a solid novel, kind of about an American abroad, and it's very heavy, based on his experiences in Puerto Rico, though it wouldn't see publication until 1998. Around this time, he wrote his first short story, Burial at Sea, which also appeared in Rogue. I am going to read a little bit of the Rum Diary. I've got a copy of it right here. You can see
Nice.
it. Yeah. Um, I'm just going to read from the beginning. My apartment in New York was on Perry Street, a 5 minute walk from the White Horse, where Dylan Thomas died. I often drank there, but I was never accepted because I wore a tie. The real people wanted no part of me. I did some drinking there on the night I left for San Juan. Phil Rollins, who'd worked with me, was paying for the ale, and I was swilling it down, trying to get drunk enough to sleep on the plane. Art Millick, the most vicious cab driver in New York, was there. So was Duke Peterson, who had just come back from the Virgin Islands. I recall Peterson giving me a list of people to look up when I got to St. Thomas, but I lost the list and never met any of them. It was a rotten night in the middle of January, but I wore a light cord coat. Everyone else had on heavy jackets and flannel suits. The last thing I remember is standing on the dirty bricks of Hudson Street, shaking hands with Rollins and cursing the freezing wind that blew in off the river. Then I got in Millick's cab and slept all the way to the airport. I was late, and there was a line at the reservations desk. I fell in behind 15 or so Puerto Ricans and one small blonde girl a few places ahead of me. I pegged her for a tourist, a wild young secretary going down to the Caribbean for a 2 week romp. She had a fine little body and an impatient way of standing that indicated a mass of stored up energy. I watched her intently, smiling, feeling the ale in my veins, waiting for her to turn around for a swift contact with the eyes. She got her ticket and walked away toward the plane. There were still 3 Puerto Ricans in front of me. 2 of them did their business and passed on, but the third was stymied by the clerk's refusal to let him carry a huge cardboard box on the plane as hand baggage. I gritted my teeth as they argued. Finally, I broke in. "Hey!" I shouted. "What the hell is this? I have to get on that plane." Goes on like that. So, a little misogynistic, a little, overly macho, a little gnarly.
Yeah.
But an interrogation of those things, you know what I mean? He hasn't really started. I mean, I guess, he's kind of latched on to the myth of who he is, but again, this wouldn't be published until
Mm.
1998. I think it's a rollicking read. I mean, is it Gatsby? No, but the action in there gets really heavy, and there's some very, even you can see in that first chapter the setup of what's happening. It's this guy, there's this woman, and there's a bunch of Puerto
Mm.
Ricans. So there's this real racial consciousness, this real class consciousness that plays out in a really savage, dark way. Um, and he does not end up having the best of times down in Puerto Rico. He figures out he
Yeah.
doesn't belong. He figures out he doesn't belong there, and that he's part of, that he is the problem.
He's
Like,
yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah,
She might be the tourist, but he's the problem.
right, right. It's very don't go where you're not wanted. The Rum Diary for sure.
Mm.
Um, all right, so in 1962, Thompson embarked on a year-long trip to South America as a correspondent for the National Observer, a Dow Jones-owned weekly paper. In Brazil, he spent several months reporting for the Brazil Herald, the country's only English-language daily. And then I'm going to read a little bit
Hmm.
from Gonzo, and we're going to get Sandra in here, his first wife.
Where did they meet?
Oh gosh, I think that they met in New York. Uh, I think so. Where did
Oh, yeah, because he had a bunch of girlfriends he was taking back to his dark cavern.
Yeah, yeah. I want to get it right. For whatever reason, I can't recall right off the cuff.
Hmm.
Let me see if I can find that.
I can have a look while you're
Yeah, let me see if I can just get it real quick. But if I can't get it, then you can do it.
okay.
That's why we do this together. Because I know they would live in. Well, they would end up out in Aspen. Uh, let's see. Yeah, see if you can find it, Abby. Because I don't want to
Okay.
derail the episode. Um, uh, yeah, see if you can figure it out. My best guess would be New York.
Right.
Okay. All right. So let's see here. Getting back on track. Um, this is her talking about uh Big Sur. I wonder if I can find. I might be able to find her first. Let me see if I can find her first mention in the book. Um, and then I want to read this bit about their life out in California. She was meeting lots of they were living a very strange life, and she was sort of doing first meets and follows Hunter.
Yeah. They
Yeah,
they met in New York City in 1958 through mutual friends.
that sounds about right. Isn't that always the way? Yeah, no, she was dating somebody else. Now I remember. She was going out with a different guy, and then Hunter swooped in, and her description of it is just like she just got blown off her feet by him. Um, yeah. Maybe an hour later, he walked in, and immediately, this is in New York, there was that chemistry, that seduction. We both sat there and talked, and about every hour, I would go to the payphone and call out to Long Island and tell them that I was just going to be a little bit later. So she's supposed to go to a party out in Long Island. We were together for maybe
Ah.
3 hours. The last train out to Port Washington was something like 1 o'clock in the morning. We were totally sensually connected, just wild chemistry. Hunter asked me whether I could come up to his cabin, and I told him I couldn't, which was a good idea, actually. So I left and caught the last train out. This is Sandy. This was probably the highest I had ever been in my life. I was just so charged with this magic, this charisma, all these feelings. I was on top of the world. The next morning, I remember telling my father, I've met a wonderful, wonderful man. At the bar, Hunter had asked me if I'd like to go out when he was back in town the next week. And when I got back to the city, I actually called people I had been dating and made a date for every single night that week. I was certain that Hunter wasn't going to call, and I just didn't want to be sitting and waiting for the telephone to ring. On Tuesday or
Strategic.
Wednesday, yeah. On Tuesday or Wednesday, the phone rang. Of course, at 3 o'clock in the morning. I really should have known right then. Hi. Well, I'll be in town later today. How about we get together tonight, etc. Um, they had 7 days together. Um, it sounds like they kind of got it on. Um, it was more about making love, talking, drinking Christian Brothers brandy, really, really awful stuff. But when you're that young, you can drink anything. After our 7 days, Hunter went down to Puerto Rico. Okay. So,
Wow.
and yeah, so kind of a whirlwind romance. They're not married, but they're, common law. Um, so this is Sandy talking about Big Sur. I was in heaven in Big Sur, California. Hunter was working hard. Joe Hudson, who became a friend of ours, was a sculptor who could do anything with carpentry and stone. He knocked out a whole side of our little two-story one-room place, and on the second floor, he put in a giant plate glass window facing the ocean. I found a job
Mm.
as a maid in a motel, and Hunter would write and get $50 for something, or $25, or maybe even $100. Our rent was only $15 a month, and once a week the postman would deliver food with his old station wagon because there were no stores anywhere nearby, and he gave everyone credit. We bought very little, but we'd get a gallon of cheap red wine, and Hunter always wanted these crescent pastry things, bear claws, and milk, eggs, maybe one box of groceries. Joan Baez lived on the Esalen property too, and on the other side of the canyon. She was living with a guy named Michael, and Michael's sister Jenny was living with Joe Hudson. So Joni and Jenny and I became friends. Joni had just cut her first album. She and Hunter had a not very great relationship because Hunter would hunt, and Joni was against anything like that. They didn't connect. Um, I had two abortions when we lived in Big Sur. There was absolutely no way that we were ready, and we didn't discuss it. I just told him that I was pregnant and that I would take care of it. I knew that if I had a baby, Hunter would leave me. There was no question. We weren't married. We had no money. He would have had to have left me for himself. I mean, as a child, he was a narcissist, and later he became a very well developed narcissist, a polished
Mm.
narcissist, actually. I asked an ex-boyfriend for the money for one and my mother for the other one. Can you imagine? They were very dramatic, especially the
Yeah.
second. Hunter came with me to Tijuana both times, and the second time was all messy and ugly. We were really poor for a long time. Every once in a while, I would ask my mother for $100, and she would always send it. Every once in a while, she would send a little food. Being poor was actually kind of great because once there was money, which was a lot of years later, then there was money to go out and drink. We had to leave Big Sur
Mm.
after a year because Hunter had written an article for a men's magazine called Rogue about Big Sur and the baths. There was sometimes a gay scene at the baths, and Hunter mentioned this in the article. Well, when someone showed the article to Vinnie Murphy, the matriarch, the grandmother of the whole property, she flipped out. Her husband had this dream of the property becoming this incredible health spa and healing place, and she didn't know about the gay scene, and she didn't want anybody else to know about it. She came striding out with her assistant and said very majestically, "You're out of here." Our $15 a month place, like literally in paradise. So we wound up back in New York. I got a job at a agency, and I would get dressed and put my hair up and put on high heels and go and make money. And when I came back, Hunter was writing. I had a steady income, and Hunter knew he could write. He just didn't think he could make a living at it yet. Um, I remember a couple of nights when he didn't come home until really, really late. That was my first inkling that he was more than a one woman guy. I was worried and jealous. I'd call apartments at 3 in the morning to try to find him. Then Hunter left for Aruba. Right before he left, I came across a letter he wrote inviting another woman down there with him. He was writing for the National Observer and some other papers, and he would send me articles and I would type them up. At first, there was no such thing as a copy machine, so I had to type maybe 10 copies of each article and send them out to New Orleans, Cleveland, wherever. The articles in those days had to be published some distance apart, like 100 or 200 miles apart. Hunter was a stickler for perfect copy, no mistakes, perfect margins. And then he made his way down to Colombia and Rio. So he went down to South America. A little more here from Sandy. During the time was when Hunter was in Rio, I met this guy who was a law student at Harvard, nice looking guy, wealthy. It's a good school. And he and I went out walking one night in New York and we crashed a Leonard Bernstein party, like you do, which was interesting. I ended up getting to babysit Leonard Bernstein's children out on Fire Island. This is what I mean. Like, what? But this fellow invited me out to the end of the island on this big motorcycle, a BSA. The next day we went to the beach and I had a bikini on while I rode on his back, on the back. He'd given me his helmet and he made a sharp turn, flipped the bike, and I landed on my head unconscious. The next thing I know, I'm in the hospital for a week, which meant that I couldn't type any of Hunter's things. So Bob Bone, who was living with me in New York, not romantically, though I always thought he was a little jealous that I wasn't involved with him, wrote Hunter a letter saying basically, Sandy can't do it. She can't write for you because she was in a motorcycle accident and she's in the hospital right now. I got a letter from Hunter when I got back to the city said, it's over. You're on a motorcycle with some guy. That's it. Bob Bone. Hunter could be absolutely shockingly jealous. His letter to Sandy was brutal. Sandy was claiming it was all a very innocent thing, but Hunter was really upset about that and extremely intolerant. It shocked me because I had never seen him that angry before. Um, and then Sandy made a surprise trip down to Brazil, and he was pretty upset about it. Um, and I got over to the little, this is her again, little hotel on the beach, got myself a room, take a little more speed, and everybody's on drugs. And I'm waiting and I'm fine. I'm fine because I'm high. There's a knock at the door and Hunter comes in and both of us just dissolve. We went out for dinner. He introduced me to friends. Everything was very, very up. And then the next day he said, I have to leave. You stay here, but I'm going to take an assignment. I don't remember what country he went to. I think it was Uruguay because I'm so angry with you. At the same time, I'm madly in love with you, but I'm also so angry with you for disobeying me that I have to leave. It's still very like sort of childish and definitely not ready for what's coming. But Sandy would
Uh,
say, I was afraid to ask Hunter about marriage. I was afraid to bring it up because I was afraid he'd say no. But I remember asking him once there. I don't remember his response exactly, but it was along the lines of, that's up to me. Hunter decided that it was time to leave Rio and that he was going to continue on the in South America and write more articles for the National Observer, and that I would go back to the States. Um,
oh, honey, you are
yeah.
better off not married to this man.
Oh boy. I mean, yow, that's a lot. But she was so
Having to
smitten.
go to Mexico for abortions and
They briefly lived in Aspen, Colorado before settling in Glen Ellen, California, where their son, well, okay, she joined him in Rio and they married on May 19th, 1963, shortly after returning to the US. So they did get married. I want to
hmm
cover that. Um, let's see here. Do, do, do. Where is it? Uh, they ended up getting married like in Indiana. Oh yeah. Then this is Sandy. The next afternoon, I was upstairs, and Hunter and his two brothers, Jim and Davison, were downstairs. And Hunter called up and said, "Sandy, come on down." I came downstairs and we got into the car with the two brothers. Hunter and I were in the back. Davison was driving, and I said, "Where are we going?" Hunter said, "Indiana." I said, "What for?" Hunter replied, "To get married. That was my proposal." I said, "Oh." Oh no.
Oh no.
So yeah, it's a little bit of bullying, I would say.
Yeah. Oh, Sandy.
Crazy. Hunter's mother persuaded Hunter to get married, so he got married across the river from Louisville in Jeffersonville, Indiana, in a marriage parlor. Sandy. So we went to this town in Indiana. The first thing we had to do was get our blood test, make sure you're not cousins. And
Right.
then we had to wait overnight for the results. We went to this cabin on a property that was owned by one of Hunter's wealthy friends. And it was all lovey dovey, and we were lying once again on a mattress on the floor, naked and half asleep. And all of a sudden, there was this banging on the screen door. Hunter got up, pulled on his drawers, and went to the door. It was the owner of the property, the father of his friend, this Scotsman wearing a kilt. And he yelled, "Who is cohabitating in my house? You will get out of here." I'm not going to do it. You will
That
be
was
out of
awful.
here. Yeah, yeah, horrible. You will be out of here. Nailed it. I'm doing my best Willie from The Simpsons.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. You will be out of here with it. I apologize to everyone in the British Isles. You will be out of here within an hour, or I'm calling the law. Hunter had already been in jail, and this wouldn't help, so we got out of there and made it to the justice of the peace the next day. I've got my arm in a sling and I'm wearing Hunter's big sweater, and the justice of the peace starts reading this thing, sacred stuff. And he looks over at me and said, "What happened to your arm?" I said, "I fell off a horse." He said, "You fell off a house?" I said, "No, a horse." "Oh, okay. You're married." And that was 19,
Wow.
yeah, 63. Fun.